Tension had been brewing in the Palacios household for months, but on a day in late August 2019, things finally snapped. Inside their small home, a heated argument between Willie Palacios and his daughter, Ariana, took a dark turn. What started as harsh words quickly escalated, crossing the line from anger to something much more dangerous. Ariana Palacios was born in the late 1980s in Argentina. She was the youngest child of Willie Palacios and Delicia, both Bolivian immigrants who had settled in the province of Buenos Aires in search of a better future for their family. Delicia found work at a lingerie workshop, while Willie, who had arrived in Argentina at the age of 30, spent his life in the funeral business. Although he managed to open his own funeral parlor, it eventually failed, and in his later years, he worked for a prominent funeral home in Buenos Aires that catered to celebrities and well-known personalities. Though little is known about her early years, it was evident that the household atmosphere was tense, with relationships marred by conflict. Some sources revealed that the Palacios children often witnessed their father being violent towards their mother. Tragically, it seemed that Delicia, in turn, took out her frustrations on Ariana. Despite the turmoil at home, Ariana idolized her father, whom she described as a well-mannered and impeccably dressed man. He was strict, but he was the one who granted her permission to attend gatherings and parties with her friends. The relationship between Ariana and her mother was fraught with tension. They often clashed, and during one family gathering, their argument escalated to the point where they shouted at and shoved each other. Family members had to intervene to prevent the situation from worsening. Around the age of 20, Ariana moved out and started living with a man named Luis. At 24, she became pregnant with her first and only child, but soon after she decided to end the relationship with Luis and return to her parents' home. When her daughter was born, the grandparents were overjoyed. They lived in a working-class area on the western outskirts of Buenos Aires. In October 2017, Ariana met Adrian through a dating app, and they began a romantic relationship. Adrian treated Ariana's daughter well, visiting them at their home, and the couple would sometimes spend weekends together at Adrian's house. By this time, Ariana, who was now 30, worked at a call center in Buenos Aires. To supplement her income, she sold clothes online and also offered hair straightening services, making her very active on social media. Her daughter, now 6 years old, was the apple of her grandparents' eyes. However, it was noted by some that Willie seemed to have an unhealthy obsession with his granddaughter, often hovering around her as if he and Delicia believed they were her parents. This added further strain to the already fragile relationship between Ariana and her mother. On August 28, 2019, Ariana had a heated argument with her mother and told a friend that she needed to talk. On top of that, she also had a bitter dispute with her boyfriend, Adrian, which left her in tears. The next day, Ariana's phone went silent, and no one heard from her again. Her sudden disappearance, coupled with her absence from social media, alarmed her close friends, who immediately began searching for her. In the days that followed, the events surrounding Ariana's disappearance became increasingly strange. Adrian was one of the first to contact the Palacios family, and when he spoke with Willie, he was met with various excuses and evasions. Willie told Adrian that Ariana had found a new partner, decided to change jobs, and no longer wanted to continue their relationship. He even suggested that Adrian should move on and not worry about searching for her, claiming that she needed a fresh start but would be fine with her 6-year-old daughter. The conversation left Adrian uneasy. It seemed odd that his girlfriend's father was urging him to stay away, especially since Ariana, with whom he would have celebrated 2 years of dating on October 14th, had given no indication that she wanted to end their relationship. As days passed, Ariana's friends grew increasingly frustrated as they tried in vain to contact her. Unable to get any response, they began reaching out to her parents' home, with some even visiting in person to inquire about her. Willie was always the one to answer, providing a variety of bizarre and contradictory explanations. Initially, he claimed that Ariana's phone had broken, preventing her from contacting anyone. Then he told someone else that she had gone to another city to sell some products. To another friend, he suggested that Ariana was likely with a new boyfriend, as she had a habit of frequently changing partners, and that was why she wasn't responding to anyone. As her friend's desperation grew, the family's apparent lack of concern only deepened their worry. They started coordinating among themselves, reaching out to Adrian and even contacting Ariana's co-workers in search of any information. When they spoke to her colleagues at the call center, they learned that Willie had visited the office days earlier to inform them that his daughter had traveled to Tierra del Fuego, one of Argentina's most remote provinces. Noelia, who had been Ariana's close friend since childhood, took it upon herself to lead the search for her missing friend. She was well aware of the tensions between Ariana and her mother, the deep love Ariana had for her daughter, and the frequent arguments she had with her boyfriend. Despite these issues, Ariana had never expressed a desire to flee, making her sudden disappearance all the more puzzling and alarming to Noelia. Determined to take action, Noelia reached out to 2 mutual friends who were also concerned. The 3 of them, like amateur detectives, set out to piece together the clues. They spoke with Adrian, who confided in them that he found Willie's behavior highly suspicious. As concern grew, Ariana's friends began applying pressure on her family. They called daily, knocked on the door repeatedly, and persistently asked for information, urging the family to report Ariana's disappearance to the authorities. They were convinced that Ariana would never abandon her daughter for such a long time without any contact, especially since she was always attentive to her needs. The situation seemed increasingly bizarre. When asked about Ariana's whereabouts, Willie would offer vague and unconvincing explanations, often stating that she had left to clear her head and that it was better for her to forget about her troubles with Adrian. However, the Palacios family consistently refused to involve the police. On September 19th, nearly 20 days after her disappearance, Ariana's phone suddenly became active again. At precisely 11:32 a.m., a text message was sent to her friends. To everyone's surprise, the message claimed that Ariana was fine but unable to respond further. Each of her friends received a generic message, something Ariana had never done before. The unusual wording of the message, including the phrase, "How are you, dear?" a term Ariana disliked because she found it insincere, only heightened their suspicions. As the friends pressed the family to report the disappearance, Willie warned them that contacting the police could lead to Luis, Ariana's ex-partner and father of her daughter, seeking custody of the little girl, thereby separating her from her mother. Reluctantly, Willie decided to file a report with the authorities, but instead of reporting his daughter missing, he filed a complaint against her friends, accusing them of harassment. Despite the family's resistance, Noelia mustered the courage to go to the local police station to report that her friend had been missing for over 20 days without any explanation. However, she was met with a wall of bureaucracy and indifference. Initially, the police dismissed her concerns, insisting that only a close family member could file such a report. Even after explaining the strained relationship with Ariana's family, the police were uncooperative. After days of persistence, on the afternoon of Wednesday, September 25th, Noelia returned to the precinct with evidence, showing the social media posts she had made about Ariana's disappearance. It was only then that the police took her seriously and initiated an official investigation into Ariana's whereabouts. A few days later, the most shocking and horrifying revelation came to light within Ariana's family. Under mounting pressure, Willie broke down and confessed to his son Mauricio that on the morning of August 28th, he had killed Ariana during a heated argument, stabbing her with a knife. He then buried her body in the backyard of their home. Mauricio, who had always had a strained relationship with his father and knew of his violent tendencies, was stunned by the confession. He immediately went to the authorities and relayed everything Willie had told him. The prosecutor ordered the immediate arrest of Willie and the preservation of the crime scene. Willie, 62 years old, was arrested and charged with aggravated homicide, both due to his relationship with the victim and the fact that the crime was femicide. During his interrogation, Willie confirmed his earlier confession, admitting that he had attempted to cover up the crime by providing false leads and contradictory stories to Ariana's friends. He revealed that he had purchased a new phone, inserted Ariana's SIM card, and sent text messages pretending to be her, all while she was already dead. Willie explained that the murder took place while his wife was at work. After killing Ariana, he buried her body in a secluded part of the backyard, covering it with plastic sheets that Delicia apparently never noticed. On Monday, September 30th, 2019, police officers, firefighters, and forensic experts arrived at Willie's property to conduct a search. At 10:30 a.m., a police-trained sniffer dog entered the scene and quickly located the spot where Ariana's body was buried. 2 hours later, the experts unearthed her remains from the garden, just a short distance from her former bedroom. It was a grim discovery. The knife used to kill her was still lodged in the left side of Ariana's neck. After nearly 8 hours of work at the crime scene, the partial reconstruction conducted by the police determined that the murder took place inside the house. Forensic tests using luminol revealed positive results on parts of the floor, confirming that the victim's body had been dragged to the spot where her father had buried her. What made the scene even more macabre for the detectives was that Willie had constructed a rabbit hutch directly over the burial site, a place designed for Ariana's daughter and the other grandchildren to play. The forensic autopsy revealed that Ariana had suffered 3 stab wounds to the left side of her neck. While 2 of the wounds were superficial, the third severed the carotid artery and also damaged the larynx, leading to her death within moments. At this point in the investigation, detectives had to rule out the possibility of accomplices and clarify many doubts regarding the involvement of Ariana's family circle. It was hard to believe that none of her closest relatives had noticed anything unusual after such a violent confrontation and a horrific crime. Even more striking was the fact that the investigation had been initiated by a friend's persistence rather than by a direct family member. One of Ariana's friends recalled a message from Ariana shortly before her disappearance, in which Ariana mentioned having a heated argument with her mother, hinting that her mother was not who she seemed to be. That was the last message she received from Ariana's phone, The fact that most of the family resisted filing a missing person report was one of the significant questions investigators wanted to clear up. In his statement to the authorities, Adrian highlighted that the relationship between Ariana and her mother had been strained since mid-July. While he never noticed anything particularly strange during his weekend visits, he did observe that the two women argued frequently. A crucial testimony in the case came from Nadia, a neighbor in the area where the Palacios family lived. Nadia had several conversations with Willie after Ariana disappeared. On one occasion, Willie came to her house and asked if she could pick up his granddaughter from kindergarten, explaining that Ariana was unable to do so. Although Nadia found it strange, she agreed to help. At that time, Willie mentioned that Ariana had left but implied it was only temporary. Later that day, after picking up the child, Nadia sent a message to Ariana to let her know everything was fine with her daughter, but the message never got through. When Nadia returned the child that afternoon, Willie told her that Ariana had left for good, discarding her phone because she wanted to start a new life. He even mentioned that Ariana had been offered a new job in another city. It also seemed odd to her when, on September 19th, she received a message from an unknown number, supposedly from Ariana, saying that she was traveling and focusing on a new boyfriend. The message was full of spelling errors, which was unusual for Ariana. This same message was sent to several of Ariana's friends, and all were incorporated into the case to determine whether Willie himself sent them or if someone else was involved in the deception. Noelia, Ariana's childhood friend, testified that during one of her many visits to the Palacios household, where she urged them to report Ariana's disappearance, Willie dismissed Ariana as a lazy woman who had likely run off with a man, abandoning her daughter. Noelia, who knew her friend well, was convinced this was a lie, as Ariana would never leave without her daughter. One potential trigger for the crime, highlighted by several witnesses during the investigation, was a labor lawsuit that Ariana had filed years earlier, which she appeared to be close to winning. Ariana had mentioned to several friends that once she received the settlement, she would rent a place to live alone with her daughter. Investigators hypothesized that Willie may have committed the crime to prevent Ariana from taking the child away, as various testimonies suggested he had an unusual obsession with his granddaughter that went beyond typical grandparental affection. To leave no stone unturned, the investigation stage took 2 years. Finally, on October 22, 2021, the trial against Willie Palacios began. He faced a life sentence for aggravated homicide, considering that the victim was his descendant and that the crime was committed under circumstances of gender-based violence. During the trial, Willie's confession and the extensive evidence gathered by the prosecution were presented. Initially, Willie was present in the courtroom, but at the request of 2 witnesses for the prosecution, he was asked to leave and listen to the proceedings from an adjacent room. Key witnesses in the trial included Delicia, the victim's mother, who by then had become Willie's ex-wife, and Mauricio, Ariana's brother. What the judges heard from Delicia, who was ultimately not charged as an accomplice, was a chilling account of her 43-year relationship with the aggressor. Throughout her testimony, Delicia never referred to her ex-husband by name, only calling him "that man," and recounted years of domestic abuse she endured while they were together. It seemed that the Palacios household had turned into a living nightmare starting in July 2019, when Willie lost his job and his violent behavior escalated. According to Delicia, Ariana and Willie frequently clashed due to their strong personalities. She also mentioned that her granddaughter was Willie's weakness. He had a disturbing obsession with her and would often scream during arguments with Ariana that no one would ever take the child away from him. Within the family, Willie's initial explanation for Ariana's absence was that he had kicked her out of the house. Since Willie was unemployed, he spent all day at home, taking care of his granddaughter and managing the household tasks while Delicia worked late into the night. This routine did not arouse suspicion, even when changes were made to the backyard. However, as time passed, doubts began to emerge from various quarters, not only from Ariana's friends and boyfriend, but also from her family, including Delicia. She became increasingly anxious and confronted Willie, asking why he had thrown Ariana out of the house. Willie's response was that he had expelled her because she was pregnant again, and he was not willing to raise another of her children. Cornered, Willie resorted to a final twisted strategy that ultimately exposed him. Willie first went to the police station to report that his daughter was in the south of the country, but that he had lost contact with her and feared she might have fallen victim to human trafficking. He even wrote and signed a letter, pretending to be Ariana. What he didn't anticipate was that Delicia would immediately recognize the handwriting as not belonging to her daughter. Mauricio was the next witness to take the stand. He recalled being surprised when his father invited him to lunch, given their strained relationship and the fact that they hadn't seen each other in years. Mauricio also recounted numerous instances of his father's violent behavior towards his mother and sisters. After hearing these crucial testimonies and reviewing the overwhelming evidence against him, it was time to listen to the defense. Willie's defense claimed that everything began with an argument. Willie allegedly slapped Ariana, who then grabbed a sharp kitchen utensil. They struggled, and Willie managed to take the weapon from her, ultimately injuring her in the neck. The defense argued that Willie acted in self-defense, asserting that he had no choice but to protect himself. On October 26 of that same year, the judges sentenced Willie to life imprisonment. The court found him solely responsible for the aggravated femicide. After hearing the sentence, Willie uttered a few brief words apologizing to his ex-wife, his family, and his daughter's friends, expressing regret for what had happened, and then fell silent. One of the judges emphasized that Delicia's testimony had revealed a family structure plagued by violence. This brutal environment normalized the conditions that eventually led to Ariana's death at the hands of her father. The judges unanimously agreed that Delicia's account was honest and free of inconsistencies, even though it carried an emotional weight of guilt, as her efforts to keep her family together had ultimately led to the worst possible outcome for her daughter. The reading of the sentence concluded with the judge's observation that although the life sentence couldn't undo the harm done to the family, it would free Delicia and her remaining children from the hell they had endured for years. But this wasn't the last blow Willie Palacios would receive. Believing himself to be the rightful guardian of his granddaughter, he was informed that Luis, his granddaughter's father, had requested custody and been granted it. Luis had also explicitly requested that Willie be denied visitation rights, a request the court agreed was in the best interest of the child. For the obsessed grandfather, this punishment may have been even worse than the life sentence itself. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.
Day after day, we are surrounded by the presence of criminals. We are spectators to the deepest darkness in human actions and the bizarre reality that someone's suffering can be a form of pleasure. As dedicated investigators of the criminal world, We're on a mission to uncover the most shocking crimes and get inside the minds of those who commit them. I am Luke, and today I bring you another unreal true crime. The case of Natalia Melman. In the heart of Buenos Aires, Argentina, a vibrant soul named Natalia Melman came into the world on the 13th of March in the year 1986. She was the third child in a family of four, comprising 2 boys and 2 girls, born to the loving couple of Gustavo and Laura. Theirs was a comfortable middle-class household, sustained by the hard work of her parents. When young Natalia was just 6 years old, her parents made a life-altering decision. They decided to uproot their family and seek a new beginning in Miramar, affectionately known as the City of Children. The Melman family longed for a serene environment that would connect them with nature, shield them from the hustle and pollution of bustling cities, and enable them to build a harmonious life together. Their journey led them to Miramar on the 7th of November in 1992. Nestled on the Atlantic Ocean coast, Miramar enchanted with its picturesque landscapes and captivating beaches. Its population hovered around 35,000 residents, and the city's economy thrived during the vibrant summer tourist season. Agriculture and agro-industry played significant roles. As the year 2001 dawned, Natalia found herself immersed in her studies at high school. She was a brilliant student, consistently achieving top-notch grades. However, her commitment to academics did not hinder her sociability. Among her peers, she was celebrated for her infectious cheerfulness and outgoing nature. Such qualities led to her being chosen as the class representative, a testament to her popularity. Yet, like any typical young person, Natalia cherished her moments of leisure. She frequently embarked on adventures to various dance venues, where the rhythm of life blended with her youthful spirit. In the vibrant nightlife of Argentina, these venues are commonly referred to as boliches, and they often attract a young, enthusiastic crowd. Natalia, a bright and determined young woman, had a clear sense of how to balance her pursuit of fun without compromising her aspirations. She was deeply committed to her responsibilities and had her eyes set on a future that held a special place in her heart. A future in medicine, with a particular fascination for obstetrics, where she envisioned herself helping bring new life into the world. Natalia possessed a level of maturity and charisma that made her seem older than her years, endearing her to a wide circle of friends. Despite being in a relationship, she confided in her close friends about lingering feelings for her previous boyfriend, who had also moved on to a new romance. Her mother fondly remembered her as a passionate and loving young woman. On the evening of Saturday, February 3, 2001, just 1 month shy of her 15th birthday, Natalia found herself grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. Weary from overthinking and worrying, she decided to embark on a night out with 2 of her friends, seeking a temporary escape and a chance to clear her mind. Their night led them through several establishments, beginning with La Cantina, a bar situated just a stone's throw away from Miramar's picturesque pier. Later, they ventured to Amadeus, another bustling locale in Miramar, a short distance from their initial stop. As the early hours of Sunday, February 4, approached, Natalia unexpectedly crossed paths with her ex-boyfriend, Juan Maximiliano. She contemplated striking up a conversation, driven by a desire to rekindle their romance, but was disheartened to find him in the company of another girl named Diana. Faced with this disheartening scene, Natalia made the decision to leave the bar and head back home. Dawn was breaking, and Natalia had experienced a tumultuous night characterized by moments of joy interspersed with spells of sadness. Her emotional state fluctuated from laughter to introspection in the blink of an eye. At around 7 in the morning on that fateful Sunday, February 4, Natalia bid her friends farewell. unaware of the harrowing ordeal awaiting her. As she walked away from the bar, a sense of vulnerability and solitude accompanied her, the residue of the night's mixed emotions. Unbeknownst to her, a man named Gustavo Fernandez, often referred to as El Gallo, had begun trailing her from a distance. Gustavo was a figure with a troubled history. In those early 2000s, at the age of 30, he carried a past marked by incarceration. In the pre-dawn hours of February 4, he had been present at one of the entertainment venues Natalia and her friends had visited. During this pivotal moment, a sinister plot had been set in motion. Gustavo, while enjoying himself at the bar, was approached by 3 officers from the Buenos Aires Province Police. These officers joined Gustavo, and together they concocted a disturbing plan. While Natalia had ventured several streets away from the bar, lost in her thoughts and weary from a night of dancing, an unexpected police patrol pulled up beside her. Gustavo, who had been surreptitiously tailing her, launched a shocking assault. A violent struggle ensued as he forcefully attempted to coerce Natalia into the patrol vehicle. Initially, he resorted to physical aggression, striking and pushing her. Despite her brave resistance, Natalia was overpowered by the sheer strength of her assailant. In a harried and alarming manner, Gustavo succeeded in placing her inside the trunk of the vehicle. Remarkably, Gustavo then continued to walk away nonchalantly, as if nothing untoward had occurred. Meanwhile, the 3 police officers sped off with Natalia towards the outskirts of the city. Their destination was a rustic cabin in an area devoid of basic amenities like water and electricity. It was a remote and desolate location chosen as part of their sinister plan. Back at the Melman family's home, the arrival of the morning on Sunday, February 4, initially seemed like any other day but swiftly transformed into a day of anguish. Laura, Natalia's mother, sensed that something was amiss when her daughter failed to return home for the night. Natalia had always been diligent about communicating her plans and whereabouts, making her absence deeply unsettling. Laura contacted Gustavo, Natalia's father, and together they embarked on a mission to visit Natalia's friends' homes to gather information. Filled with a lot of doubts and growing concern, they engaged in conversations with Natalia's friends. It was during these conversations that they pieced together the events of the previous night, including Natalia's movements before leaving the bar. Upon learning about the places Natalia had visited and the events leading up to her departure from the bar, Laura and Gustavo initiated a search. They checked local hospitals, beaches, and various locations throughout Miramar, desperately searching for any sign of their daughter. However, their efforts yielded no results, and as night descended, they were left utterly distraught and without any clues regarding Natalia's whereabouts. In their mounting despair, Natalia's parents made the heart-wrenching decision to report her as missing. When they reached out to the authorities, the officers they encountered classified the incident as a case of a runaway from home rather than a disappearance. This unusual turn of events marked the beginning of a series of suspicions and irregularities that would soon unfold. Gustavo and Laura couldn't bear to think in the worst possibilities, but the unnerving silence from Natalia confirmed that she was being prevented from reaching out to them. Natalia's disappearance was far from a voluntary act on her part. The initial response from the police raised eyebrows due to their apparent lack of urgency in the case. By February 5th, local media outlets had started featuring Natalia's face, and soon, national media joined the coverage, all reporting on the young girl's disappearance. As Natalia's family and friends tirelessly sought answers, witnesses gradually emerged, confirming they had seen Natalia leaving the bar, with Gustavo following her as she moved away. Simultaneously, in a show of support for the family and concern for Natalia's welfare, the Miramar municipality provided Laura and Gustavo with an office space. At that point, they lacked even a telephone to gather information about their daughter. This space became a hub for people to share leads and provide crucial details regarding the case. Laura and Gustavo were determined to uncover the truth surrounding their daughter's disappearance. The office's glass front was covered with posters bearing Natalia's face, serving a dual purpose: to keep their daughter's image at the forefront of everyone's minds and to ensure the confidentiality of those coming forward with information. In the days following Natalia's disappearance, extensive search efforts spanned various areas of Miramar and even extended to Mar del Sur, a locality approximately 20 kilometers away, based on reports of Natalia being seen in the area. The police conducted various operations, interviewed potential witnesses, and established traffic checkpoints, but regrettably, these efforts bore no fruit. Simultaneously, rumors began to circulate, suggesting possible police involvement in Natalia's disappearance. The police investigations extended to another coastal area in the Buenos Aires province, as suspicions grew around certain police officers' roles in the case. Gustavo, initially a witness, gradually faded from his usual places of visit, eventually disappearing entirely. This development frustrated the Miramar community and deeply distressed Natalia's parents. They felt betrayed and couldn't comprehend how the prime suspect in their daughter's disappearance had managed to escape scrutiny. Days turned into weeks, and the official authorities remained tight-lipped, prompting the community to express their dissatisfaction. A series of protests erupted, demanding answers regarding Natalia's case. These demonstrations, attended by both locals and thousands of tourists, consistently called for Natalia's safe return, with around 8,000 people marching each night, vowing to stay on the streets until she was found. On February 8, 2001, a young woman was exploring the iconic sand dunes area of Miramar. While traversing the terrain, she made a grim discovery: the lifeless body of a girl, just 800 meters from where police had been conducting search operations. The girl's remains were in an advanced state of decomposition and partially covered by clothing. Visible signs of abuse and indications of forced intimacy were evident. A cord was found around her neck, suggesting strangulation. While it was presumed to be Natalia, local forensic authorities had to confirm her identity. Gustavo, Natalia's father, had been away, seeking tracking dogs to aid in the search for his daughter. He learned of the discovery through television news, and the shock and grief were nearly unbearable. Meanwhile, a local resident reported his attempts to search the area near the discovery but was thwarted by the police. His suspicions of police misconduct deepened when he realized that the body had been found near the location where officers had barred his return to the area. The discovery of Natalia's body ignited public fury in Miramar, exacerbated by suspicions of police involvement. This anger escalated into violence, resulting in significant damage to the police station. The case's prominence compelled government authorities, including Minister of Security and the President of Argentina, to remove the initial lead investigator in Natalia's case from his duties. As more details emerged, it was revealed that Natalia's body had been found lying face up, bearing signs of severe brutality, including burns on various body parts and evidence of forced encounters with multiple individuals. Forensic analysis revealed genetic material from 5 different men, and her resistance was evident beneath her fingernails, indicating a fierce struggle. Authorities confirmed that Natalia had been held captive for several hours and that her pleas for release had been ignored. Following her death, it was presumed that her body had been kept in the same house where the events occurred for 4 days before being transported to the dunes, where it was ultimately discovered. Given the irregular conditions of the case and the alleged police cover-up reported by the family, it wasn't until September 2002 that the trial took place. 3 out of the 5 murder suspects, the police officers Ricardo Suarez, Oscar Echenique, and Ricardo Anselmini, were brought to trial, along with a 4th individual, Gustavo Fernandez, who was identified as the one responsible for handing Natalia over. In mid-October of the same year, the 2nd Criminal Oral Court of Mar del Plata established the guilt of the 3 individuals through skin, saliva, and pubic hair samples. Additionally, traces of soil found on Natalia's shoe were deemed consistent with the soil from the remote house, serving as evidence in the trial. The court sentenced the police officers Oscar Echenique, Ricardo Anselmini, and Ricardo Suarez to life imprisonment with additional penalties, considering them co-authors of the crimes of aggravated illegal deprivation of liberty, aggravated sexual abuse, and triple qualified homicide with cruelty, treachery, and in collusion with two or more persons. Gustavo El Gallo Fernandez was also sentenced to 25 years in prison. There was a law in effect during the time of Natalia's kidnapping and murder that led to further reductions in the sentences of those responsible for the teenager's homicide. They once again sought the benefits of temporary releases, and remarkably, their requests were granted once more, every 15 days, twice a month, and for 12 hours each time. Ricardo, and Oscar could leave prison and return to their homes. During one of these instances when he was free, Ricardo unexpectedly encountered Laura in a supermarket. Overwhelmed by anger, she shouted at him repeatedly, labeling him a murderer, but he simply responded with a smile. This incident shed light on the fact that the oversight of the measure granted to the former police officers was inadequate. The permission was intended for them to go to their residences, not to freely roam the city as if they had no pending legal matters. These glaring irregularities provided a strong argument for revoking their benefits. However, due to the difficulty in placing trust in the local courts, Gustavo, Natalia's father, resorted to a hunger strike in front of the Palace of Justice in Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina. This act of protest yielded results. In a case marred by irregularities, Gustavo managed to have his sentence reduced to 10 years. He was released in 2009, even though he was accused of another murder in Miramar. In June 2018, the trial of Ricardo, an active-duty police officer with over 20 years of service, commenced. This officer had been under investigation since 2002, as he had been partially identified from the DNA samples taken during the investigations. However, he was later acquitted. He faced charges as a co-perpetrator of deprivation of liberty and legitimate freedom, along with the use of violence, aggravated sexual abuse with penetration, in collaboration with two or more individuals, and double aggravated homicide, committed to ensure the impunity of the co-perpetrators of a previous crime. He declared his innocence, despite the fact that the pubic hair found on Natalia's body matched his DNA by 97%. Tragically, not only was he acquitted, but he was also not expelled from the police force. The judges concluded that the accusation could not be substantiated. However, the verdict faced appeals from the prosecution and Natalia's family's legal representative. On November 13, 2019, the Buenos Aires Court of Appeals nullified that acquittal and ordered a new trial. In the meantime, the criminal defense attorney of two former police officers who were incarcerated declared to the media in early 2023. She asserted that her clients, Oscar and Ricardo Alfredo, meet the eligibility criteria for parole. During a hearing at the Mar del Plata Court of Appeals, she formally requested their early release. She also emphasized that the prison service reports have been favorable, highlighting that her clients have maintained impeccable behavior, with no records of infractions throughout their incarceration. From her perspective, they have already served the requisite time as mandated by the law. Once again, the parents of Natalia, ever watchful, attended the hearing and voiced their plea against the early release of the two former police officers convicted for their daughter's tragic fate. Fast forward to mid-May 2023, Ricardo, one of the police officers, aged 65, received a life sentence for his involvement in the abduction, sexual assault, and murder of Natalia Melman. Following the court's verdict, Laura expressed that the quest for justice continues, awaiting the identification and prosecution of the fifth individual involved. She made it resoundingly clear that her maternal determination knows no bounds and that the fight for justice will persist until all those responsible for Natalia's untimely demise are held accountable. The Natalia Melman case underscores the paramount importance of a trustworthy and impartial justice system where individuals responsible for criminal acts, regardless of their background, face the legal consequences commensurate with their actions. The unwavering dedication of Natalia's parents played a pivotal role in ensuring that justice ultimately prevailed, preventing corruption and a lack of transparency within certain law enforcement circles from obstructing the pursuit of truth and accountability. Natalia's mother has reiterated again and again, "Our battles do not waver. While we cannot bring our daughter back to life, we must relentlessly pursue the fifth individual involved. It is through collective strength that we continue our pursuit of justice." And that's the end of today's case. As always, I appreciate your support for my work. If you subscribe, like, and share this. Day after day, we are surrounded by the presence of criminals. We are spectators to the deepest darkness in human actions and the bizarre reality that someone's suffering can be a form of pleasure. As dedicated investigators of the criminal world, we're on a mission to uncover the most shocking crimes and get inside the minds of those who commit them. I am Luke, and today I bring you another unreal true crime. The case of Agostina Halibert. Agostina Halibert was born on March 23, 1991, in the province of Buenos Aires, Argentina. She belonged to a well-known family and was the eldest of three daughters of the couple Carolina and Edgardo Halibert, who served as the Secretary of Health of their city. Her uncle, Herman Halibert, held the position of tourism minister and was a pre-candidate for deputy in the Rio Negro region. Consequently, the Halibert family was widely recognized in their province and other regions of Argentina. Those who knew Agostina since her childhood consistently praised her outstanding qualities. She was described as a sensitive, sincere, and loving child who had a passion for dogs and excelled in design, crafts, and decoration. Helen, who shared her adolescence with Agostina, observed her creative talent from a very young age. Helen recalled that when they were in school together, each class was assigned a theme, and Agostina always took the lead in decorating the classroom entrance with her impressive drawings and giant models. While her classmates were cutting and pasting, they followed Agostina's lead because they knew she was steps ahead, creating incredible models. Agostina also had a strong interest in fashion. She even designed the graduation sweaters for her high school class. Those close to her affectionately called her Agos and described her as sociable and an excellent hostess. She loved dressing up, and during her teenage years, her friends often gathered in the garage of her house for pre-dance parties. She would try to introduce her different groups of friends to each other, always striving to connect people. Agostina enjoyed baking and cooking, and she was skilled at it. She had a keen sense of taste and excelled in many things. She had a curious nature, and when something piqued her interest, she pursued it. After completing her secondary education, she initially enrolled in architecture, but later abandoned it. During that time, she focused her energy on fashion design and studied it for a while, but she ultimately changed her direction. Nevertheless, she was a successful young woman who used her knowledge to chase her dreams. She even started her own clothing brand, worked as a model, and was building her career. At some point in her adult life, Agostina's path crossed with Juan Manuel Reverter, with whom she began a relationship that seemed to be going well. Little is known about Juan Manuel's life, and even the names of his parents have not been disclosed. Only a text from an acquaintance referred to them as Moni and Mauricio, and other family details remain unknown. The only accessible information about Juan Manuel is his LinkedIn profile, where he is promoted as a software engineer, a graduate of the National Technological University in Argentina, although his listed place of residence was Toronto and its surroundings in Canada. Interestingly, a search in the university did not reveal him as a graduate. Instead, a resolution from the university's Superior Council in 2017 stated that he had not passed two subjects during the periods of 2008 and 2009, which led to him losing his status as a regular student in the field of information systems engineering. Agustina and Juan Manuel's relationship began during the pandemic and was characterized by ups and downs. According to some of her family members, he exhibited psychological violence towards her and was controlling. However, the situation escalated in the summer of 2021, marked by more serious conflicts and violence perpetrated by Juan Manuel against Agustina. Her father shared that she was deeply affected by the relationship, but with the support of her family, she rebuilt her life and had no contact with him for a whole year. Around September 2022, Agustina decided to move to Mexico, specifically to the picturesque beach town of Playa del Carmen in the Riviera Maya, to further her modeling career. She rented an apartment, leaving behind her comfort zone in her native Argentina and putting a considerable distance between herself and Juan Manuel. In Mexico, Agustina lived by doing advertising appearances as a hostess and engaging in modeling activities. She aspired to travel the world while pursuing her modeling career. She loved Playa del Carmen and was genuinely happy there. She found work quickly and was thriving. She had many friendships and the support of a childhood friend who was also living in the area, so Agustina was not alone. Furthermore, she brought her dog with her for emotional support. Agustina's passion for travel was evident in her social media posts. Brazil, New Zealand, China, and European capitals like Madrid, Paris, London, and Brussels were some of the destinations that Agustina had the pleasure of visiting and sharing with her 16,000 followers on Instagram. One of her future plans was to move to Europe. Candela, Agustina's 21-year-old sister, had come to spend the summer in Playa del Carmen. She wanted to enjoy the beautiful Mexican beach area and be close to her older sister. The two decided to share the apartment where Agustina lived because it had 2 rooms and they would be comfortable. At the end of December, Agustina's ex-boyfriend, Juan Manuel, reappeared. He came to visit her for the holidays. They reconciled, and he stayed to live with both girls. Candela would never have chosen to share an apartment with her sister's boyfriend, but things happened so quickly that before she realized it, the man was settled in Agustina's room. In her recent conversations with her family, Agustina admitted that they had decided to rekindle their relationship and announced that they planned to move to Spain. However, the peace in their relationship was always short-lived. On Thursday, February 16, there was a major argument because Agustina had discovered infidelity. The atmosphere in the apartment was extremely tense. On the afternoon of Friday, February 17, 2023, Candela left her sister alone with Juan Manuel. When she returned the next day at 7 in the morning, she tried to enter her sister's apartment, but the door was locked. She asked the building's doorman if there was any way to enter, and he informed her that screams and a fight had been heard in that apartment during the night. The police had been called twice due to the neighbors' complaints. Candela went back to the apartment and insisted on trying to get in. She entered the access code, but it didn't work. The door was locked from the inside, so she had to knock. After persisting several times, her sister's boyfriend finally got up and opened the door. Almost immediately, Juan Manuel asked Candela where Agustina was, and she criticized him, saying how could she know where her sister was if she had left the previous evening, leaving the couple alone. She insisted that he should know where Agustina was, but he replied that she was sleeping. While they argued, Agustina's small dog began barking, and Candela followed the sound to the bathroom of the apartment. There, she found Agustina with a bathrobe belt around her neck, tied to a hand towel holder that was only 4 feet high. Agustina's sister and her boyfriend untied her and brought her to the living room, where they attempted CPR, but Agustina was already dead. Candela then called the police, and the forensic experts examined the scene and took the body to the morgue, where an autopsy was performed, and she was immediately cremated. The case was initially classified as suicide, and it was considered closed. However, despite the decision of the Mexican justice system, the Halibert family suspected that Agostina's death was actually a murder committed by her boyfriend, and they had their reasons. In late February, Edgardo sent a letter to the Foreign Ministry. The letter that reached the office of the Minister of Foreign Affairs requested action from the competent authorities in Mexico and explained that the family had experienced a situation of helplessness regarding their daughter's death. He detailed that the judicial procedure was riddled with shortcomings because none of the basic protocols were applied to investigate the real causes of her death. The boyfriend was not detained, his phone was not confiscated, and no toxicological tests were conducted, nor were any injuries checked. In addition to all this, the family had no access to the case. Despite efforts by the Argentine consul to obtain copies of the proceedings, he was unsuccessful. Meanwhile, Edgardo recalled that the Foreign Ministry had an obligation to investigate and punish violence against women and to guarantee the family's right to clarification regarding the circumstances surrounding Agostina's death. Regarding this ongoing case, the Foreign Ministry's action is of utmost importance because, given the conditions of the investigation in Mexico, Juan Manuel is free to act. Since Agostina's death was classified as suicide, her partner's legal situation is not compromised at the moment, which is why he is not considered a fugitive, but a person of interest for the family. However, it is essential to bear in mind that both Agostina and Juan Manuel are Argentine citizens, and the Foreign Ministry must ensure the rights of both individuals, even if it is proven that the man committed the crime of which the family of the deceased influencer accuses him. On her part, Carolina, Agostina's mother, embarked on a crusade in the media to seek justice and put pressure on Mexican investigators. She denounced the violent relationship between the victim and her partner. Carolina asserted that her daughter was killed by her boyfriend, and she mentioned in a televised interview that her daughter had been tortured, burned, abused, and beaten, including blows to the head, all prior to her death. She was convinced that he had staged the supposed hanging from a towel rack. Agostina was a tall girl, and she was dressed and ready to go out when Candela found her. According to Carolina, nobody who is contemplating suicide takes the time to get dressed up. She recalled that Juan Manuel had a history of violence. During a press conference shared on social media, it was revealed that the couple had been dealing with ongoing issues that had been kept a secret. She mentioned that the man had never inspired trust, and 2 years earlier, they had rescued Agostina from the apartment she shared with Juan Manuel after a physical assault on her part. She stated that if they hadn't gone to rescue her that day, her daughter would have lost her life at that moment. After that violent incident, Agostina chose not to report it, and her parents decided to respect her decision, although they believed it was best not to let such incidents go unreported to the authorities. The consequences of not taking action at that time were felt 2 years later in Mexico. According to her mother's account, on Friday, February 17, Agostina sent a message at 2:30 p.m. saying that she felt ugly and believed that she did not deserve a man who would hurt her. Carolina provided support from afar and encouraged her to leave the apartment. She reminded her that there was no need to be with that man. She advised her to kick him out of the house and not even get upset about a person who wasn't worth it. In her opinion, her daughter, by returning to that violent man, had played a risky card, and it ended badly, to her regret. The model's uncle, Herman, stated that Juan Manuel's parents had contacted the family and promised to cooperate. However, the dialogue ended when the man did not show up for a Zoom meeting where he was supposed to share his version of the events. Regarding this absence, Carolina said that he had remained in hiding but was likely listening and watching everything to stay informed about the case. In her view, he would have given his version if he had nothing to hide. Angry and frustrated, she said that Juan Manuel's parents were responsible for covering up what she considered a monster. On March 8, International Women's Day, there were marches in Mexico and Argentina, demanding justice for Agostina. This increased pressure on the Mexican prosecutor's office, which announced that it would investigate the death of the Argentine model as a possible femicide. This decision was based on the autopsy report, which showed signs of head and facial injuries, multiple lacerations on the body, and bruises consistent with sexual abuse. A forensic expert hired by the Halliburton family analyzed the official report and pointed out various signs of violence, such as punch marks on the mouth and a significant head injury. Additionally, the forensic expert noted lacerations in several parts of the body and internal and external hematomas, suggesting recent and non-consensual sexual activity. However, the only available evidence is this forensic report because, as mentioned earlier, the Mexican authorities proceeded to cremate Agostina's body shortly after classifying the case as suicide. Following the mobilizations on International Women's Day, the Mexican justice system announced that it had reclassified the case, originally labeled as suicide, and had begun investigating it as a possible femicide. The family's lawyer stated that the case had been referred to a special unit equipped to handle such cases. She further accused the main suspect, Juan Manuel, of attempting to stage a suicide and highlighted signs of violence at the scene. The apartment was locked from the inside. There were visible injuries on both the victim and her partner. A table leg was found out of place and on the floor, and 2 calls had been made to the police the previous night. She also criticized the judicial investigation, revealing that the crime scene had not been properly secured, contrary to protocol. It was essential for the scene and the victim's body to be preserved until the investigation concluded. She added that due to numerous errors, information that could have been obtained from the devices was lost since the perpetrator took the cell phones and all the data with him. The investigation into Agostina's violent death in Mexico promises to be a challenging journey for the family, which has been following the case from Argentina, more than 7,000 kilometers away, with a different legal system and culture. New statements were made by the prosecutor of the state of Quintana Roo on March 13, 2023, asserting that the Argentine model and influencer had taken her own life punishment, and scientifically. These declarations were made during a press conference held by the security cabinet of that Mexican province. The prosecutor detailed that there was a history of violence both before and during her relationship with her partner. He stated that it could not be ruled out that Juan Manuel might have induced her to take her own life, and that could be a matter of investigation. When questioned by journalists about the cigarette burns on the woman's body, he assured that these injuries occurred before her suicide. He explained that there had been violence the night before her death between her and her partner, and there was sufficient evidence of this. Regarding Juan Manuel, the prosecutor stated that he had been interviewed by the investigative police, and at that time, they did not have enough evidence for an arrest or any other legal action against him. However, this did not mean that he would not be pursued later if a connection to Agostina's death could be established. Edgardo, Agostina's father, insisted on the need to change the classification of the case, as their lawyer had found numerous pieces of evidence to classify it as femicide. When asked by an Argentine media about the prosecutor's statements, Herman, the victim's uncle, expressed that they were not surprised that the Attorney General was defending the suicide theory, because acknowledging that there were many elements suggesting femicide would mean admitting their failures. He believed that the prosecution had acted clumsily and hastily in the early stages of the investigation, leading to the loss of crucial evidence. However, as the case was transferred to the specialized unit, it indicated that something had gone wrong, as it is not common to replace a team that had performed well. He argued that the prosecutor was trying to defend the initial theory because going in a different direction would be an acknowledgement of their poor work. Gerardo Reynoso, a journalist, provided details of the judicial process. He explained that the Prosecutor General's office reclassified the death as femicide due to pressure from Agostina's family, the lawyer, and a feminist march on March 8th. However, in the subsequent hours, the justice system announced that they were still considering the suicide theory. He highlighted that, in general, the prosecutor's office did not want to validate the independent expert opinion that had found injuries compatible with femicide. Recognizing this would mean accepting that someone outside the prosecutor's office had solved a problem they should have handled with a properly executed expert analysis. Regarding Juan Manuel's situation, he pointed out that the prosecutor's office would have to call the boyfriend to discuss the case. In the event of her suicide, he would inevitably be part of the investigation, at least in the statements that should have been taken to determine what had happened. To make matters worse, the journalist emphasized that the crime was discovered on a weekend, and during weekends in Mexico, intern trainees and junior investigators typically handle duties. This could have been the reason why everything was mishandled. He believed that their actions were not malicious, but rather due to a lack of experience, and this was reflected in how the case was handled. Some days later, in Argentina, news surfaced about a call received by Agostina's father. A couple of days after the Women's Day March, a prosecutor from Quintana Roo contacted Edgardo by telephone on the instruction of the state prosecutor office, who wanted to speak with the family. Before hearing from the father, the person on the phone, speaking on behalf of others whose identities were unclear, stated that the system wanted to apologize for what had happened. They emphasize that if Agostina's boyfriend bore any responsibility, they would certainly prosecute, as there was no intention within the prosecutor's office to cover up anything. They added that if any public servant from the prosecutor's office was found responsible, measures would be taken. He also quickly clarified that he would organize a meeting with the general prosecutor and a team of experts to show the father what they had. He stated that the general prosecutor had instructed that other state agencies in Mexico should also review the autopsy. Then the prosecutor, who had been speaking gently, abruptly shifted his tone and raised a complaint. He mentioned that it had been claimed that they did not follow the femicide protocol, and he argued that every death of a woman was worked on according to the femicide protocol. Edgardo also dropped the formality and transitioned from being a grieving father to one demanding justice for Agostina. After asking the prosecutor for his name, he directly addressed him as Carlos and firmly presented his point of view on the matter. He told him that if supposed experts found a young girl deceased in the situation she was in, hanging with a man inside the residence, and they didn't detain that man, didn't take his statement, and didn't seize his phone, then the investigation left much to be desired. He added that after reviewing the autopsy and witnessing what his daughter had endured, the conclusion for him was that everything had failed, a 100% failure, because his daughter had died. The latest information came at the end of March, just days before the one-month anniversary of Agostina's death. The hypotheses of suicide and femicide are still being pursued on separate tracks. Halbert's lawyer said that the case had been transferred to the Women's Crimes Division, meaning Agostina's case is now on the femicide and gender violence table. She continued to work with the prosecutor handling the case and focused solely on demonstrating the femicide angle, providing more evidence, and investigating the boyfriend's involvement. She apologized for not being able to provide more details, but explained that all leads related to the murder were under seal. Regarding the question of when Juan Manuel could be arrested, the lawyer stated that it would depend on the conclusion of the investigation and that it was up to the prosecutor to determine if sufficient evidence had been provided or if more was needed. However, she reiterated her confidence in being able to prove everything. Neighbors reported hearing screams until around 2:30 in the morning. According to statements obtained after that time, silence prevailed at the scene. The time of death listed in the incomplete autopsy report is 4 a.m. While Agostina's family continues to demand justice, the alleged perpetrator is in an unknown location. Although the Mexican justice system has not issued an arrest warrant against him, and no judicial proceedings have been opened in Argentina because the alleged crime occurred in another country, he remains free. However, he has not made himself visible and has not faced the family of the girlfriend he supposedly loved and lived with until the day of her death. This case is still in development, but due to its preliminary stage, many proceedings are conducted discreetly and away from the media. The prosecutor's office investigating the alleged femicide issued a document to determine Reverter's whereabouts. The order was issued on June 7th by the Specialized Prosecutor's Office for the Investigation and Prosecution of Femicide to search for, locate, and request Reverter's presentation without depriving him of his freedom. As stated, the goal is to expand their interview to gather more information and comply with this authority's request. Well, that's all for today's case. As always, I appreciate your support for my work. If you subscribe, hit the like button and share this video. It will help me continue creating content. This was another episode of Unreal True Crime. See you soon. Day after day, we are surrounded by the presence of criminals. We are spectators to the deepest darkness in human actions and the bizarre reality that someone's suffering can be a form of pleasure. As dedicated investigators of the criminal world, we're on a mission to uncover the most shocking crimes and get inside the minds of those who commit them. I am Luke, and today I bring you another Unreal True Crime. The case of Rachel Marie Runyon. The story of Rachel Marie Runyon began on June 23, 1979, when she was born in the serene landscapes of Weber County, Utah, United States. She was the only girl in the family of Jeff and Elaine Runyon. The couple's firstborn was named Justin, and the youngest child was Nathan. The three siblings lived in harmony, promising laughter and shared memories. According to reviews of her life in 1981, Rachel, with her innate grace, the 2-year-old girl, ascended to the realm of childhood royalty by being crowned Little Miss Sunset. With her golden hair and radiant smile, she captivated attention at every local event. But little Rachel not only had physical beauty, her inner nobility was much greater, according to her mother Elaine. She was a gentle and kind girl who was often seen on the periphery of playgrounds. She was extremely observant and analytical, and knew how to stay away from the rough games between Justin and the other boys. She had the habit of sucking her thumb while observing the mischief of others. That gave her an even sweeter and also funny appearance, which aroused much sympathy. Her mother occasionally teased her about her future, predicting that she would have rabbit or beaver teeth, to which Rachel responded with a naughty giggle. The Runyon family chose to settle in Sunset, a community only about 6,000 inhabitants back then, which seemed a safe paradise to raise their children. Their modest home was located near the Doxey Elementary School playground. For the three little Runyons, that park became their place of laughter and fun. Trusting that they were doing their best for their children, Jeff and Elaine decided to install a gate in the fence of their own yard, opening a direct passage to the favorite place site of the three children. Despite the apparent tranquility of Sunset, Jeff and Elaine were always vigilant, tirelessly warning their children about the risks of trusting strangers. They insisted on the importance of staying in safe places and, above all, taught them never to follow someone unknown, no matter what they offered. Their commitment to their children's safety was unquestionable. In the late morning of August 26, 1982, 3-year-old Rachel, her brother Nathan, and the eldest 5-year-old Justin asked their mother for a simple request. They wanted her permission to go to the playground of Doxey Elementary School, less than 5 meters from their home. Although Elaine had always been cautious about letting her children play without her supervision, the proximity of the playground and the need to finish preparing lunch led her to agree to the request. As no precautions seemed excessive to her, the mother watched them from the kitchen window while preparing food. However, when lunchtime came around at approximately 12:55 p.m., only Nathan and Justin returned home. The voice of little Justin trembled as he told his mother what had happened moments before. He described how a young man had forcibly taken Rachel from the park. The man first attempted to lure all 3 children, promising ice creams and chewing gums from a nearby store. While playing in the open air, the man approached them, trying to persuade them to get into his car, claiming to have the gum-flavored ice cream they longed for. In hell innocence, Rachel mentioned her favorite ice cream flavor, and Justin, acting as the protective older brother, warned his sister not to pay attention to the stranger's offer. Then Rachel started to walk away, but the man was quicker, roughly grabbing and carrying her over his shoulder, silencing her screams as he took her to his vehicle. Justin and Nathan, paralyzed by fear, hadn't fully recovered when their mother called them to eat. Instantly, Elaine found herself in the midst of her worst nightmare. With her heart racing, she hurried to the store the man mentioned, questioning employees and shoppers with heartbreaking urgency. However, her inquiries yielded no results. No one remembered seeing Rachel or the man. 20 minutes after Rachel's disappearance, Elaine was at the Sunset Police Department, sporting the kidnapping. With immense distress, Elaine barely managed to speak, and the search for answers became a painful and uncertain journey. The Sunset Police acted promptly, initiating a plan involving vehicle checks around the city. Despite their efforts, the suspect was not apprehended, nor was Rachel recovered. With time pressing, a special team of 10 investigators from various law enforcement agencies in Utah gathered under the direction of Sheriff Brant Johnston, intending to solve the child's mysterious abduction. Descriptions provided by Justin and another 10-year-old child at the park gave investigators critical details. They described a light-skinned African-American man, around 30 to 35 years old, with distinctive afro hair and a marked mustache. He drove an old dark blue 4-door vehicle, embellished with wooden strips on the sides. This man had been seen in the park, interacting with various children and having a cup of coffee for at least 15 minutes before taking Rachel against her will. His strategy was to avoid immediate alarm and prevent children from screaming in his presence by engaging them in playful activities. The children's sharp memories allowed the police to create a detailed composite sketch. However, the 3 children were the only direct witnesses, as no security camera have recorded the incident in the school playground. Despite persistent calls by a police and the media, no one reported seeing a man with those characteristics. Subsequent efforts by the law enforcement agencies involved forensic analysis and rigorous door-to-door investigations, supported by a committee of neighbors, many of whom offered monetary contributions for an improvised search. The Runyon family embarked on a heartbreaking journey to find their beloved daughter. With limited resources but unwavering will, both the family and the community volunteers launched various methods to find Rachel. A national flyer campaign displaying the girl's image was meticulously orchestrated, and friends and neighbors joined in a race against time, calming local neighborhoods in a frantic search. The case of Rachel Runyon saw thousands of missing person posters disseminated to raise public awareness regarding her disappearance. The public's response was overwhelming, providing investigators with myriad clues about Rachel's possible location and the potential identity of the abductor. Despite the determination in pursuing every lead, the outcomes were predominantly disheartening. A week after the harrowing disappearance, Rachel's parents, Jeff and Elaine, traveled to New York to attend a press conference with the intent to sustain media attention and emphasize the urgency of their daughter's return. Jeff, in a courageous plea, conveyed the profound damage the abductor had inflicted on their daughter and themselves, urging anyone with information to come forward. Elaine, with visible anguish, suggested the possibility of Rachel being sold after her abduction, and she appealed to potential adoptive parents to ensure they were not adopting her missing daughter. The family's relentless dedication was soon met with a harsh reality of mounting financial costs. reaching $10,000 in postage expenses alone within 3 weeks. The long-term sustainability of such immense physical, emotional, and financial exertion was seemingly impossible. On September 3rd, the distressed parents brought their appeals to the Today Show, offering a reward of $20,000, primarily sourced from community donations, aiming to gather more information on Rachel's whereabouts. The community of Sunset demonstrated immense solidarity, contributing an additional $20,000 to the reward, totaling $40,000, a substantial incentive for Rachel's safe return at that time. The unexpected discovery on September 19, 1982, obliterated the enduring hopes of those searching for Rachel and left her loved one's heart broken. A family traveling in Mountain Green, Utah, discovered the partially covered body of a small girl, later identified as Rachel, despite the advanced decomposition. The mystery surrounding her death persisted, as the exact cause remained undetermined, with asphyxiation not ruled out. Following the painful confirmation of Rachel's fate, Jeff and Elaine organized a proper farewell, attended by over 300 people. Rachel was finally laid to rest at the Washington Heights Memorial Park in Ogden, Utah. In the midst of devastation, Elaine transformed her pain into efficacy for child safety and legal improvements for child abduction cases, fostering awareness and change in a world that had brought her immeasurable sorrow. With her heart shattered but resolve unbroken, Elaine became a steadfast support, offering counsel, guidance, and solace to other parents, plunged into the turmoil of their children's disappearances. As accounts of this case highlight, Rachel's legacy surpassed her individual tragedy. Her kidnapping and the horrifying manner of her death echoed through the halls of power, serving as catalysts for substantial change. In October 1982, legislation was enacted at the federal level, granting parents of missing children access to an information exchange hub managed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. This hub began accumulating and archiving fingerprint and blood-type records of over 300,000 children from Utah, aiming to forge an indispensable resource in combating child abductions. It may seem grim to assert that the agonizing loss of Rachel to an unapprehended abductor wasn't futile, but that is indeed the case. The state of Utah introduced the Rachel Alert System in April 2002. Intended to notify residents about active child abduction and missing children cases, this system emerged as a ray of hope. It was only initiated when rigorous criteria were fulfilled, such as the child being a minor or mentally disabled, immediate danger, and not running away voluntarily. Detailed physical descriptions of the child were also mandatory. The Rachel Alert was activated only twice, during the disappearance of Elizabeth Smart in June 2002 and the kidnapping of Nicholas Triplett, a 3-month-old, in January 2003. Both children were eventually recovered alive. After Elizabeth Smart's safe return, realizing the efficacy of such alert systems, 41 states adopted the Amber Alert System, named for another girl, Amber Haderman. In April 2003, Utah transitioned from the Rachel Alert to the Amber Alert System to comply with national standards. However, this didn't signify that the 3-year-old would be forgotten. To honor her memory, the Attorney General's office instituted the Rachel Runyon Award for citizens who aid in recovering a child by contacting the law enforcement when an alert is issued. Elaine was also invited to participate in the award ceremonies. Currently, the Amber Alert System undergoes testing twice a year in Utah on January 13 and August 26, the dates marking the anniversary of Rachel's abduction. Although Rachel's murderer remains of large in the case unsolved, Lieutenant Phil Instead's vow that it will not be forgotten persists. Phil, the first to respond to Elaine's urgent call following her daughter's abduction, has continually supported the Runyon family. Over the years, he repeatedly reassured them of Sunset Police Department's unwavering commitment to find the individual responsible for Rachel's abduction and subsequent tragic death. In 2007, the case was officially reopened, and the police have been collaborating closely with the Utah Attorney General's office in their quest to apprehend and bring the perpetrator to justice. At the time, a $58,000 reward was offered to anyone delivering information, leading to the arrest and conviction of the perpetrator. With the reward seemingly not alluring enough to elicit crucial information, hopes of identifying the perpetrator are heavily dependent on substantial advancements in forensic technology since 1982. Strategies like the potential exhumation of Rachel's body to collect more evidence were also considered. In 2007, DNA testing on items found near the location of the remains provided initial results, but didn't significantly advance the investigation. Regardless of the hurdles and uncertainties, the Runyon family maintains hope that justice will eventually be served. The scope of suspects has varied over the years. In 2012, it was disclosed that focus was on an inmate in a Pennsylvania prison, a former resident of Sunset in 1982. While no formal charges were levied against him, he was deemed a person of interest in relation to the little girl's kidnapping and homicide. Another potential suspect is a man with a criminal background located in New Mexico. Chief Ken Aborn of Sunset Police has noted that evidence does point toward this individual's possible guilt, but it's currently inadequate for a formal arrest. Despite the obstacles, the quest for justice for Rachel is ongoing, and the resolve of her family and the authorities remains unyielding. In May 2016, the park, a silent witness to her abduction, was renamed Rachel Runyon Memorial Park. On August 26, during a ceremony filled with emotion, it became a tangible tribute to the little girl's memory. Her commemorative stone, bearing her image and a brief recount of her story, stands within the park's boundaries, the engraving on the stone commemorating her short-lived life. This was not the only significant act in Rachel's memory. In March 2017, Rachel Runyon's Missing and Exploited Children's Day became law in Utah, aiming to emphasize child safety in the community annually, inspired by Rachel's story. In 2019, there was renewed hope in Rachel's case when private investigator Jason Jensen began working with the Runyon family. Jensen, co-founder of Utah's Cold Case Coalition, focused on a different crime from the 1970s. Witnesses in this unrelated case had provided incorrect information about the suspect's appearance, leading Jason to reconsider the descriptions given in Rachel's case. Specifically, he pondered if Justin, Rachel's brother, could have misinterpreted the racial identity of the abductor due to his young age and the predominantly white neighborhood they lived in, where interactions with African Americans were limited. Jason discussed with Elaine the possibility that Rachel's brother might have observed a Latino man abducting his sister. Justin never associated the abductor with being African American. He remembered him having a dark complexion and a distinct mustache with a gap or separation in the middle. The authorities, however, had prioritized the description provided by another older child present at the park that day. According to Jason, this misinterpretation possibly misdirected the investigation for almost 4 decades. Correcting this information brought the possibility of identifying a new person of interest, bringing the case closer to a possible resolution. Jason also provided more details about the suspect's car, a 1973 blue-painted car with wood panels on the sides, allowing for more focused search efforts. Soon after the release of the updated sketch of the suspect, a woman came forward with a promising lead stating that her uncle, who had a history of sexual assault and abuse and was in and out of prison, resembled the sketch. He had been released from prison in 1981 and lived in the area at the time of Rachel's abduction, driving a blue-painted car with wood panels, exactly like the one Jason thought was used in Rachel's abduction. However, he had passed away, so without a confession or DNA, there wasn't enough evidence to connect him to Rachel's murder. While the police allegedly took a DNA sample from his daughter to compare with the evidence collected in 2007, the results have not been disclosed. Elaine, since the incident, has devoted her life and Rachel's legacy to preventing other children from suffering the same fate by educating children and parents about the dangers of abductions and crimes. Every year, on the anniversary of Rachel's abduction, her family holds small ceremonies at the park from which she was taken, now named after her. The case remains unsolved, and these events are used to urge the community to approach the Sunset Police if they have any information about her disappearance or the perpetrator's whereabouts. Well, that's all for today's case. As always, I appreciate your support for my work. If you subscribed, hit the like button and share this video. It will help me continue creating content. This was another episode of Unreal True Crime. See you soon. Day after day, we are surrounded by the presence of criminals. We are spectators to the deepest darkness in human actions and the bizarre reality that someone's suffering can be a form of pleasure. As dedicated investigators of the criminal world, we're on a mission to uncover the most shocking crimes and get inside the minds of those who commit them. I am Luke, and today I bring you another Unreal True Crime. The horrible story of Marlene Warren. Marlene Warren was born on April 15, 1950, in Michigan, USA. Growing up without a father, she dreamt of having a large and close-knit family from a young age. This dream soon became a reality when she married a man named John, with whom she had 2 children. However, years later, the family faced an unexpected tragedy when John suddenly passed away from an illness, leaving Marlene alone with her 2 young children. Marlene dedicated herself to work, striving to support her children on her own. 6 years after her husband's death, Marlene met a man named Michael Warren. They soon married, and Michael was involved in the used car business. After marrying, he started his own business in this sector. By this time, Marlene was earning good money and chose to invest in Michael's business, also assisting in its management. The business thrived, and the couple expanded it, buying several properties to rent out, improving their financial situation significantly. The family moved to Wellington, a luxurious suburb of Miami, where they bought a large house. Although their life seemed almost perfect, another tragedy struck in 1988 when Marlene's eldest son died in a car accident, deeply affecting her and her younger son, Joseph. After her son's death, Marlene considered selling the rental properties. While the business was profitable, it was also a constant source of worry. Issues with tenants not paying rent or losing their income were common, and Marlene, being kind-hearted and empathetic due to her own past struggles, found it difficult to evict people. However, she and Michael couldn't afford to let people live in their properties for free. Eventually, Marlene wanted to get out of the business to avoid these moral dilemmas. 2 years had passed since her son's death, and the family was beginning to recover and return to normalcy. However, on the morning of May 26, 1990, something terrible and unexpected occurred. Marlene was at home with her son and 3 of his friends who had come over for breakfast. Their kitchen had a view of the driveway. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and Marlene went to answer it. Her son saw a white Chrysler parked in front of their house. When Marlene opened the front door, she was greeted by a person dressed as a clown, holding 2 balloons and a bouquet of flowers. Marlene commented, "How cute," but then something unexpected happened. The clown who appeared at Marlene Warren's doorstep suddenly pulled out a gun and shot her in the head. Marlene's son and his friends, who were in the house, rushed to the hallway, only to be met with the shocking sight of Marlene bleeding on the ground. The clown, dressed in full costume, stared at them for a few seconds before returning to the white Chrysler and driving away. Marlene's son, despite having an injured leg, urged his friend to drive after the clown, but they were unable to locate the vehicle. Marlene was quickly taken to the hospital in an unconscious state, and the police began their investigation. They first spoke with everyone in the house at the time of the attack. Marlene's son could not identify the assailant due to the costume, gloves, and wig, noting only that the attacker had very dark eyes. His friends added that the clown was quite tall, and that the work shoes worn were strikingly different from the costume. A neighbor walking their dog near Marlene's house also saw the clown but couldn't provide significant information to the police. The investigators started looking for a white Chrysler and sought other evidence. Their first suspicion fell on Michael, Marlene's husband, who had left for a Miami racetrack that morning and was not at home during the attack. Despite having reasons to believe he was involved, such as the family's fondness for clowns and an anonymous tip to investigate Michael and a 26-year-old woman named Sheila Keene, the police found that Michael was around 110 kilometers away from home, making it physically impossible for him to commit the crime. Sheila Keene, who worked at Michael's used car business, was rumored to be having a secret affair with him. This relationship had been speculated by some colleagues. If Michael was in a relationship with another woman and wanted to leave Marlene, he faced a significant financial loss in a divorce, as most of the family assets were in Marlene's name. Despite the lack of concrete evidence linking Michael and Sheila to the crime, the police still considered their involvement probable. Given the disguise used by the assailant, the police considered whether Sheila could have been the clown. Witnesses couldn't confirm the attacker's gender, and Sheila was known for her assertive character. She handled clients who were late on rental payments, often needing to repossess cars, a job in which she was unyielding, and for which she carried a .38 caliber pistol, the same caliber used to shoot Marlene. After the bullet was removed from Marlene's head, it was determined to be from a .38 caliber gun, raising further suspicions about Sheila's potential involvement in the crime. The police revisited Sheila Keene to inspect her firearm, but Sheila claimed that her gun had either been stolen or lost months before Marlene Morin's shooting, leaving the detectives with no solid leads. During their investigation, they learned that Sheila was divorced and that after leaving her husband's house, Sheila moved into a rented apartment, and there were suspicions that Michael Warren, Marlene's husband, was paying for this accommodation. An interesting discovery awaited the police in their investigation regarding the whereabouts of the clown costume, balloons, and flowers used in the crime. 2 days before the attack on Marlene, a woman had entered a costume shop near Sheila's apartment. The shop was closed at the time, but the woman insisted on being served. She urgently requested a clown costume, a wig, face makeup, and a red nose. Despite being told to return the next day as the shop was closing, the woman persisted, and the employees eventually sold her the items. There were no surveillance cameras in the store, so the police had to rely on the employee's verbal description of the woman, who they described as tall and thin with dark hair. When shown photographs by the detectives, the employees indicated that the woman resembled Sheila. The investigation also traced the balloons and flowers to a supermarket located about 1 kilometer from Sheila's apartment. The seller reported that a woman matching the description given by the costume shop employees had purchased these items just a few hours before Marlene was shot. He added that the customer behaved rudely and somewhat masculinely. 2 days into the investigation, on May 28, the police were informed that Marlene had succumbed to her injuries, and the case was reclassified as a murder. The detectives continued their investigation, seeking more evidence against Sheila. They obtained a warrant to search her apartment. Concurrently, they received a tip about a white Chrysler parked 13 kilometers from Marlene's residence. Upon inspection, the investigators confirmed it was the same vehicle driven by the assailant. Inside, they found long dark hairs and orange fibers that appeared to be from a clown wig. During a search of Sheila's apartment, the police found identical orange particles and work boots that matched the description given by witnesses, similar to those worn by the clown. However, due to the absence of routine DNA analysis at that time, all the evidence against Sheila was circumstantial, which could lead to her acquittal in court. Detectives then turned their attention to how the clown had acquired the car used to reach Marlene's house. They uncovered that about 1.5 months before Marlene's murder, a man had mistakenly rented a car from one of Michael Warren's main competitors. When this mix-up was reported to Michael, his reaction was notably strange. Rather than informing a customer about a mistaken car rental from one of his competitors, Michael Warren told the man to just leave the car in the parking lot and put the keys inside. Michael then asked an employee to take him and Sheila to the parking lot and instructed the employee to keep quiet about the incident. The employee witnessed Michael and Sheila leaving in the same white Chrysler. This happened shortly after a serious disagreement between Michael and his competitors, where Michael had been giving his competitors a negative image in his advertisements, which they disliked. Detectives decided to investigate Michael's business further and found numerous legal infractions, including tax and insurance manipulation. They also found evidence suggesting that Michael had used illegal methods to repossess cars, even when clients had paid on time and met all conditions. During this investigation, police spoke with an employee who recalled an interesting incident where Michael and Marlene had an argument at work. After Marlene left, Michael asked the employee how much it would cost to make his wife disappear. Although this sounded suspicious, detectives still had no evidence linking Michael to the murder. Nevertheless, he was arrested for various business manipulations and initially sentenced to 8 years in prison, but was released after 4 years. In 2002, Michael married Sheila and moved to another state. Although detectives could never prove Michael's involvement in the murder, they continued to monitor him. After moving, Sheila began introducing herself to new acquaintances as a police officer and had dyed her hair from dark to blonde. She and Michael opened a restaurant and seemed to have built a good life. However, rumors began circulating among their employees that Sheila had murdered Michael's ex-wife. Apparently, an employee stumbled upon information about the crime and discovered that the police had suspected them. Still, without definitive proof, the case remained unresolved until it was reopened in 2013. A new investigative team requested a re-examination of all available evidence, as DNA testing and other forensic technologies had significantly advanced since 1990. It took several years to re-examine the evidence. First, the orange fibers found in Sheila's apartment, the car, and the crime scene were compared, showing they were almost identical. The most significant lead came later when experts took DNA samples from several hairs found in the white Chrysler and compared them to Sheila's DNA, which matched perfectly. This provided irrefutable evidence that Sheila had been in the same car the clown used to drive to Marlene's house. Sheila was arrested in 2017, then 54 years old, and continued to deny her guilt. She was denied bail and awaited trial in jail. Michael insisted he had nothing to do with Marlene's murder and believed Sheila was innocent as well. He hired expensive lawyers for her, and the trial had been prolonged for years. In preparation for the trial, the police uncovered some previously unknown facts. About a year after Marlene Warren's murder, an attorney who had worked with Michael Warren on business matters contacted them. He revealed that approximately a year before the murder, Michael had asked him a very strange question. If a husband kills his wife, what happens to the property registered in her name? Would it go to the husband? The attorney was surprised by this question, but advised Michael that if the husband arranged for an acquaintance to commit the murder and the court couldn't link the husband to the killer, he would inherit the woman's assets. Furthermore, the attorney shockingly advised Michael that if the murderer wore some kind of disguise, like a clown's, they would likely never be identified and thus escape punishment. Another shocking confession came from a man whose deceased father had worked for Michael at the time of the murder. He confessed that his father had helped carry out illegal plans for extra money, such as rolling back odometers to sell cars at higher prices. On the day of the murder, Michael asked his father to dispose of the gun and the car used by the murderer after abandoning the Chrysler in the parking lot. Before dying, the man's father revealed that the second car was hidden in a river canal. The police found the car in the canal, confirming the witness's truthfulness, although no evidence survived. Sheila's trial was repeatedly postponed until a final date was set for May 12, 2023. However, on April 25, something unexpected happened. Sheila pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty she would have faced if she lost the murder trial. Her lawyers stated that Sheila was innocent of the murder, but feared for her life, and thus accepted responsibility for someone else's crime. She was sentenced to 12 years in prison for second-degree murder, with about 5.5 years deducted for the time already served and further reduced for good behavior. She was expected to spend an additional 16 to 24 months in prison. As for Michael, his involvement has not been proven, and he remains free. It's unlikely he will ever be charged with his wife's murder, as there is no direct evidence against him. Marlene's son, the sole member of his family, thanked the detectives for uncovering the truth and keeping the case alive for years. Despite the profound tragedy of his mother's death, he overcame his grief, opened his own small construction business, and rebuilt his life. And that's the end of today's case. As always, I appreciate your support for my work. If you subscribe, like, and share this video, it will help me continue creating content. This was another episode of Crime Analysis Central. See you soon.